Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
First of all, thank you for being here. So, without wasting any more time, let's start with the questions.
Yes, please.
How have historical events influenced the evolution of traditional menus in your region? And what dish best represents this?
So, if you're looking at historically, food has been available in various types and forms and formats. I mean, we've been noticing that, there are certain trends that are happening. We assume that a lot of food is what we've actually been eating age old. Take, for example, idli. According to you, idli is South Indian?
Yeah. Yeah.
Actually, no. Idli came to us from Indonesia. So when the Chola dynasty traveled and they were going about Asia, they brought in steaming cultures. And that is around the time that the idli started happening. So there was a fermented batter that was put in, and idli is actually not as much Indian as it is Indonesian. So that's pretty much what idli is. And if you're looking at today, we consume idlis on a very, very regular basis. That's basically because of motorized implementations. If you're going back in the 40s, we didn't have electric grinders. So typically in the south, especially Tamil Nadu, idli was a dish that was had usually only during Diwali time. Because imagine a 15, 20 member joint family which would have to grind a lot of batter, and everybody ate a lot more idlis than they do now. But 15 to 20 idlis was an average consumption. So someone had to grind that batter by hand. So it didn't happen every day. But today you have idli batter that's getting available very, very easily everywhere. And hence it's getting consumed in a much higher quantity. So like this, there have been a lot of foods that have come in on a traditional basis, have evolved into something that is a lot easier to make today, and hence being made very differently and very, very on this format.
Yes, sir. Moving on. How did ancient kitchens manage their manpower, and what traditional roles still exist in modern kitchens?
So the kitchens actually are very much like a military brigade. I mean, even today, kitchens world over are operated where the chef, which actually just means boss in French, is the guy who runs the kitchen, and then there is a lot of military discipline passed on. If you notice, most places across all, you'll find everybody says, "Yes, chef," and do it. It comes from a tradition of being almost like a military brigade because most kitchens initially were run by rajas and maharajas who would go hunting and then they would be cooking in bulk in large quantities and it would be done by the soldiers. Either that or it was in large temples which had to have and follow systems exactly. So you have a kitchen brigade, you would have someone who's in charge of cutting and chopping, you have someone who's in charge of the grinding and putting masalas together. You'd probably have someone who's going to be making different kind of mise en place. For instance, someone who is going to be actually cooking in a bulk vessel would be using both hands and something that's called a kudupi, which is a utensil that's used to saute. So they would be using that. So you notice that depending on what the number of hours they spent, the muscles got more developed. Okay, the specialization started getting better, and over time, as they started smelling and understanding, they would actually get the human body becomes a tool utensil to the extent that they'd be able to smell and say the food has the right amount of salt or not, it's the right consistency, and that's when all this art form of cuisine came in. Actually, it's a lot of science. They just have done it so many times over and over and over again that they started understanding, and gradually over time they started becoming the masters of their part of the cuisine. So you have halwais who are sweet masters. If you go into the French classical brigade, you have people who are sauciers, who would make sauce. Like this, you have different designations, different people.
So let's move on to the next question. What are some historical ingredients that have shaped traditional cuisine, and how have sourcing methods evolved over time?
When we're going to be taking any kind of ingredients, like I said, we have today the whole world is on our plate. Finding a strawberry is not very difficult.
Yes.
You actually have regions in India which grow strawberries, but strawberry is not from India. There was a time when you would find it very, very difficult to get a lot of the ingredients, but today almost anything and everything available all over the world is available here in India. And as the world becomes smaller, we get ingredients. But sustainability is about what grows in your region, is actually what is good for you in health. So we have a lot of ingredients that were very Indian, which today are not being seen. There's something called mukuti avare, which is actually avreka. It's just a flat bean, but in the shape of a nosepin. It's become a rare vegetable today. Okay. Eggplant, I was sitting and talking to somebody during lunch. There were more than 18 varieties of eggplant between the Coimbatore and Salem belt, which today have become almost out of existence simply because people have not been consuming quantum of eggplant.
Okay. So moving on, how did traditional kitchens function before modern machinery, and what are some ancient tools still in use today?
Pretty much most of the ancient tools are still very much in use. Like for instance, if you were to take a whisk, okay, I'm sure you would have seen pictures where people would have a string and then they'd be churning butter.
Yes, sir.
Okay, imagine the same thing is now being held handheld, where you have it, you press it with a motor, and then it's going to be getting in. It's going to start making. You'd see this in a lot of lassi shops. You'd see it in places. We call these stick blenders. Okay, because it's a stick and it's got a blender. Earlier it was done by hand. Today it's done by a motor. And we have the traditional utensils are still pretty much the same. What I'm talking about, the kudupi, which was a pretty long piece of metal with a flat at the bottom, almost like a oar of a boat, was what is used to saute, has become smaller and smaller and smaller, is what your basic ladle that you used to flip. Shapes have changed, materials have changed, it's changed from metal to maybe a silicon, but more or less the utility value is the same and most utensils are pretty much the same. And we started making, the Indians have been very indigenous and we've been making a lot of tools to solve problems which actually have been multi-purpose. For instance, we're taking the coconut grater, the one which has a piece of wood and there's a little sickle over there and there's a coconut grater.
Yes.
Okay, so it's a very interesting instrument that's used which can grate coconut. And if you go to Maharashtra and a lot of other places, maybe even in South India, where you into Tamil Nadu and Karnataka, the sharp part of it is what you use to cut vegetables. So the ladies would put it between their feet and they would use that to cut vegetables. It's a very useful way of doing it, which if you know how to do, you can do very well. If you don't, you're probably going to cut something else. So.
Okay. So next question. How were traditional foods marketed or popularized in ancient times, and what role did festivals or events play?
The festivals are actually the space that you had a lot of marketing happening. For instance, go back to those times when we didn't have Netflix and chill. And basically what we did is we had festivals which would celebrate with a lot of color. It gave rest to the farmers, the workers. It gave an opportunity to meet people who were relations in other villages. You got to mingle, you got to kind of, and there was invariably, there was song, there was dance, there was some kind of activity in terms of puppeteering and you went to buy something, you went to sell something. So it was a lot of activity and these were 2-day, 3-day kind of festivals, which invariably also meant that whenever there was food being made, which came from either the produce of the farming that was happening, or it was because somebody made something and they were trying to sell that as a ware. So these were all things that happened during festivals. It was a 2-day, 3-day affair of a festival. So you had a farmer who had a crop of maybe sugarcane that he'd converted into jaggery and he wanted to sell jaggery as jaggery, or he wanted to make a sweet out of jaggery and sell it. So that was one way that was trying to get to a point in time where you would have consumption going up. People would get to taste different kind of food. They'd get to see different kind of examples of what was happening. They saw people. So all of this was actually, if you're looking at it, marketing.
Okay, sir. So the next question is, what were the core management practices in royal or temple kitchens, and how have they influenced today's culinary institutions?
Again, we were talking about how the kitchen brigade is a very military type of organization, and if you were looking at how the recipes were maintained and done, usually like the Maharaj, the king, would oversee production either in a temple or a function, and they would be giving their ideas and something like that. And India actually built systems of how to do standardization of recipes. So they had containers which had X volume would make for so many people. And when you're looking at the utensils that were made to cook in a temple or a function were huge, large, really large volumes. So they had measures which start off from tolas to bigas to, so these are all metric systems that we developed well before anything else. And the thought of a standardized recipe actually comes from India, where we started off, where we would make and cook in bulk. So if you went to a temple and had prasad, the prasad in that temple would be consistently throughout all time. And that's how standardized recipes started happening. So they would put a lot of time and effort into making sure output was the same, no matter who made it. Okay, as long as the ingredient in the process is same, you ended up with a standardized product. So there was a lot of management that went into this. There are account books in temples, there are account books of the Rajas, Maharajas as to what dish was cooked, when it was cooked, what it costed, and who made it. If you go to Rajasthan, you actually have very large ledger books about all of these things that were made in the palace.
Okay, sir. So moving on, how do culinary trends fade and return back into restaurant?
Basically, almost like what you're looking at as a trend. I mean, it comes, it goes, but then it comes back again over a period of time. If you're looking at right now, the flavor of time is to be sustainable, is to have food which grows within your region, going back to roots, traditional foods, okay, going into foods like millets, which are healthy for you, healthy for the land, healthy for the economy, okay. So these are things that basically come as a trend, as a fad, and then stay for a while, and then after some time, when it starts getting, you start getting used to it, it actually stays for a good amount of time. So the millet revolution, which is happening right now, is primarily because at one point in time, India would eat more millets. Rice actually is not Indian. White rice is not Indian. It came down from China. We would be eating diet predominantly of millets. In the south, we'd probably wake up and our breakfast would be something like kanji, which is leftover cooked meals from the previous night, left in a pot with a little bit of water, maybe some chopped onions and green chilies. So there's lacto fermentation happening, and then the next morning it'd be had with a little yogurt and some salt, and that would be breakfast. It's got a decent amount of carbs, decent amount of probiotic. Today there's a lot of focus on gut health, but if you're going back to what we used to eat as Indians traditionally, it has been focused completely on the gut. And so millets is making a very big way back right now. They're sustainable in the sense that millets use a lot less water to make, I mean, to grow as a crop than rice. It takes a little effort today because we've not spent some time soaking the millets and understanding it, but people have started understanding that also now, and something that's healthy for you in general. So yes, this is pretty much how a trend comes back over time and keeps bringing back into.
So that was the last question, sir. Thank you so much for being a part of this event, and
My
thank you so
pleasure.
much for taking time off of your busy schedule and coming here.
Completely my pleasure. Love
Thank
being
you so
here.
much.